Alright, welcome back. This is the second video for third period Algebra 2. The first video said today in third period Algebra 2. Again, this is the second video for Friday's class. Table of contents update, you should have already done this. This is still the same topic. Absolute value equations and inequalities, section 1.2. We're now just getting to absolute value inequalities. The good news is they're pretty similar to absolute value equations. There's just kind of one additional thing you need to remember. Quick thing, fair share to start. Let's do this pretty quickly. Take a look at these two circled absolute value inequalities. Take about 20 seconds. Write down as many values of x that you think would satisfy these two in your output page. Go and do that. Level 0, writing down x values that would satisfy each of these inequalities. Thank you. Maybe take 10 more seconds, staying at level 0. Thank you. All right. So, what do we find? I wish we could actually do the pair share part of think pair share, but this is a video, so it doesn't really quite work. Hopefully you wrote down some of the values. For example, 1 would work. Absolute value of 1 is less than 2. Might have written down 0. 0 would work. Absolute value of 0 is less than 2. Negative 1 would work. Absolute value of negative 1 is 1. 1 is less than 2. Yes, all these would work. Actually, anything that is less than 2, but greater than negative 2 would satisfy this inequality. Interesting. So it's like an interval. It's an interval of values, any value between 2 and negative 2 would satisfy that inequality. Any value in there. If you don't believe me, try any number between 2 and negative 2. It's going to work. Any number outside that interval, for example, negative 2, absolute value of negative 2 is 2. Is 2 less than 2? No. How about this one? You probably said 3 would work. Probably said 4 would work. Maybe you even realize negative 3 would work. Maybe you even realize negative 4 would work. Because the absolute value of negative 4 is 4. Is 4 greater than 2? Absolutely. In this case, actually anything greater than 2 or less than 2 would work. Okay? That would look like this. So, or less than negative 2. You don't believe me? Try any of those values. They're going to work. Cool. So that was just to give you kind of a preview. Hopefully you're just kind of taking notes of that in your output page. I think it was probably the best place for that. If you didn't write that down, I think it's probably okay. Thanks for your full engagement. Let's write some things down. Absolute value equations and inequalities. Please remember, when working with any absolute value inequality, you must create two cases, just like when we did equations. If less than, the connecting word is and. If greater than, the connecting word is or. We'll talk more about that a little bit later. But here's what you should be getting down in your notebook at this time. A roadmap to follow. Excuse me, sorry. Roadmap is as follows. 1, isolate the absolute value, just like you did in equations. Okay? Set up two inequalities. One with a positive value and one with a negative value, just like absolute value equations. But this time, we're going to flip the inequality sign for the second one. You'll see that. 3, solve both inequalities. 4, set up your number line and write a compound inequality as your solution. Last but not least, check your work. All right, let's see that apply. If you need to pause it to get that roadmap down, go ahead and do so. But if somebody in your team has it down, maybe you can just silently copy it as we move on to make sure we're using our time well. So we're going to do just one guided example. It's going to hit on everything that we want to talk about. So I'm sorry, this should be cleared. The computer's having some trouble. Here we go. So one guided practice problem. This will help you prepare for your homework. Go ahead and copy this down in your notebook. Guided practice, and you can number it number 1. It's going to be the only one we actually do. 4x minus 2 is less than negative 112. Look at your roadmap. The first thing is to isolate the absolute value, and as you should remember from absolute value equations, it's tempting to do 8 minus 4 is 4, But you can't do that because the 4 is actually connected to the absolute value through multiplication, as I just indicated by that dot there. Okay? It's kind of attached to the absolute value by multiplication. So what we're actually going to get rid of first is the addition and subtraction. We're going to subtract 8. Okay? Isolating the absolute value, we're going to get rid of 8 first. Hopefully you'll be okay about that. This leaves us with negative 4 times the absolute value of 4x minus 2 is less than negative 120. At this point, we're going to ask ourselves, is the absolute value isolated? And hopefully you're saying to yourself, no, because there's a negative 4 that's being multiplied by the absolute value of negative 4. Or sorry, by the absolute value of 4x minus 2. So how do we get rid of it multiplying by a negative 4? That's right. Divide by negative 4 would be the opposite of that. So divide both sides by negative 4, and, what do we need to remember when we divide by a negative and we're working with inequalities? Yes, we need to remember to flip the sign. Make a note for yourself. Flip the sign. Negative 120 divided by negative 4 is a positive 30. And again, I'm changing that less than to a greater than. At this point, ask yourself, is the absolute value isolated? Hopefully you said yes. We're going to set up two inequalities. Similar to equations, I'm just going to kind of take the expression from the absolute value, and I'm going to set up two different situations. In one situation, well, that 4x minus 2 could be greater than 30, right? Because anything greater than 30, take the absolute value of it, it's still going to be greater than 30. The other situation, this is a little bit tricky. I'm going to do two things. I'm going to flip the sign and negate it. So it's kind of like absolute value equations where you set it equal to, you do a negative, but you also need to flip the sign for the second situation. And the reason why is because any number less than negative 30, when you take the absolute value, is going to be greater than 30. So this situation will also work. Here's just the expression that was in the absolute value. Don't do anything to change it. All right, we're going to solve these two inequalities. I'm fully confident in your algebra here. Add 2 to both sides. 4x is less than negative 28. X is less than negative 7. Notice when I divided by 7, I did not flip the sign because I was, when I divided by 4, I did not flip the sign because I was dividing by a positive 4. Over here, 4x is greater than 32. X is greater than 8. Last but not least, in absolute value inequalities, please always, 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 always graph your solution and also write the final answer as a compound inequality, which basically means you combine the two different inequalities. Let's graph it first. The graph would look like this. So we have 8 somewhere up here on the number line, negative 7 somewhere down here, and x is greater than 8. Interesting. So I'm going to do an open circle, do an arrow that way. Or x is less than negative 7, so that's an open circle as well. Arrow that way. This is the type of situation where it's an OR scenario. What I mean by that is you can't be greater than 8 and less than negative 7 at the same time. It's an OR situation. We're saying any value of x greater than 8 or any value of x less than negative 7 is going to satisfy the original inequality. Pick a number greater than 8. For example, 9. Plug it into the original inequality, it's going to work. Pick a number less than negative 7. For example, negative 8. Plug it into the original equality, it's going to work. Okay? So, last but not least, I'd like you to spend some time doing some homework. So you can get started on your homework. That absolute value equations and inequalities homework is going to be due on Monday. So get to work. I think the last thing I'll point out though is note, sometimes you have an AND situation. Ignore all this for a second. For example, say you ended up with x is less than or equal to 2 for one of the solutions, and x is greater than or equal to negative 2. For that one, x is less than or equal to 2 and x is greater than or equal to -2. In other words, you can write it like this. It's an interval. That's another situation you will come across. Okay? So know that's either an and situation or an or situation. At this time, please be working on your homework. Please be doing some great work. Even though I'm in Portland, Oregon, you can contact me by texting me. I'd love to provide some support. I hope you had a great class. Again, I'm really looking forward to seeing you on Monday. I'm really looking forward to us really kind of moving forward. I know you're all kind of anxious to kind of make this a great class, and I am too. I'm with you on that. So let's work together. Let's make it a great class. Yeah, let's do some awesome math. So I'm going to sign off. Hope you all have a great weekend. I'll see you on Monday. Adios.